Welcome back. After a bit of contemplation at the end of the last episode, I have come to several conclusions. The first and most important of which being that this was a really terrible idea, and getting the footage for this episode has done nothing to dissuade me from that conclusion. But anyway, the second and most relevant for now is that I need to find and take out a battle tower pronto. To put it bluntly, I did precisely squat all in the second half of the first episode other than farm XP really badly. Did that improve my quality of life? Sure. The rest of it? Not so much. More stuff is more gooder doesn't apply here, since everything I take with me is entirely disposable whether I want it to be or not, and if it isn't an ingredient for my endgame gear, a passive upgrade, or something that lets me make better disposable gear, it's pretty much worthless at this point. By extension, if it doesn't give me something from the list above, then there isn't really any point in sticking around, ergo battle towers. They have a predictable structure, a high loot density, and are easily cheesed, even with the limitations that I'm under, and are basically the perfect combination. The only trick is finding one. So I set out to do precisely that with very limited success. Multiple times. And for my efforts, I am rewarded with something almost better. It's a jungle. Sure, it's weirdly red and purple and has some decidedly not very jungle-like plants in it, but I know a jungle when I see one, and this definitely qualifies. You might recall in the last episode that I spent a great deal of time blathering on about how incredibly annoying it was to farm XP using flint and steel cheese without an inexhaustible supply of wood. Well, look at that, will ya? A nigh inexhaustible supply of wood. Visibility and blood pressure medication,
surprise,
not included. Isn't it funny how those things work out? I only brought 2 stone axes since I did not intend to do any major forestry renovation, and crafting is almost always going to get me spotted and shanked, so I opt to go loud and proud on my return. If the crafting didn't do it, this absolutely would have, and I am, of course, followed all the way back to my sky shack by a giant flesh balloon that drops sentient depth charges at regular intervals. This is, of course, fatal, but it's a fatality that's under my control, so after tactically embracing my imminent mortality, I can make my way back up 5 stacks of logs richer. More importantly, though, is what I spotted in the ruins of the by now absolutely trashed village. Do you see it? 'Cause I sure do. Despite being made out of obsidian, enchantment tables can be broken with any kind of pickaxe, so I make a beeline for the thing the instant I dropped my wood off. And it's not like parasites are going to be doing any enchanting after all, so there's really no sense in just letting it sit down there. It is entirely useless without lapis, of course, but so are the rest of my possessions, and they don't have that excuse of needing lapis, so I imagine it'll fit right in. Meanwhile, back in the sky hut, things are going great. There's charcoal cooking, I'm getting some sorting done. Why am I getting panicked status effects? And oh boy, there's a parasite in my ceiling and my bed is broken. Oh fun. Here we go on this magical journey. All over again. No. To get back home, I just have been chain respawning myself until I find a village with a waystone and then I teleport back. We are well past the point where it's worth trying to keep the death count down. At least I say that it's worth trying to keep the death count down. That's the plan. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out, such as in this situation where I spawned in underneath a giant slab of obsidian and had to try and punch my way out through the stone to escape. That was fun. Silver linings, I also found a tier 5 fire dragon for later. Re-found it. This is the second time that I've seen this particular dragon, and the first time I encountered it, we parted ways shortly after it leapt out of the sand and parted its jaws, so I didn't get it on camera. Either way, that probably will save me some time in the long run, predicated on me finding this place again, because this bad, lizard of undetermined gender is absolutely on my hit list for upgrade materials. And there we go! You see, that wasn't so bad after all. It only took, like, this many deaths. No biggie. Now we can get back to the real meat of the episode, which is watching charcoal smelt, turning it into torches, lighting the torches, and then throwing everything off the side of my house to despawn. Yep, I wish this was a bit, but it is very much not. I am entirely out of ideas here, and I'm hoping if I stack enough passives, something a bit more proactive will present itself as a better option because I don't have anything. So yeah, after taking a break on the whole recording this disaster for a couple of days project, I can confidently say that if a more proactive approach to tackling this presented itself, it certainly did not do so to me, so it's back to the woodshed. Farming trees in RLCraft can be quite productive, provided that you have the right enchantments for the job, and I absolutely do not, leaving me to choose between felling the traditional RLCraftian dynamic trees and the larger set-piece style ones formed out of log blocks by Dregora. There's probably a correct option here, but I certainly don't know it, and in my experience felling trees seems a bit less safe than mining them, so I grabbed a bunch of axes and went with the latter option, at least for the first bit. After cosplaying for a while as a termite, I can't honestly say that I think it makes that much of a difference, wood speed-wise, so I opted to switch over to beaver mode just to keep from getting bored. With a properly enchanted tool and a big enough tree, termite mode is almost certainly going to be faster, but I have neither, and also need to pretend that I have a life, and spending 5 hours beating logs in a video game does not sell that illusion nearly as well as the variety of interesting activities presented by desperately trying not to die because you touched a cranky nest of inner tubing at terminal velocity. But yeah, no, this sucks. It's slow, it's boring, it is stupidly dangerous, and it's just not gonna work. What else can we do? Well, I do have a couple other options, and neither of them are great, so I take the next least worst and decide to try my hand at some exploration again. Rivers in Dregora are nice and big, so if you're willing to accept the near-inevitable death via the attention you get from boating and do just a little bit of strafing, you can actually cover some serious ground without dying too quickly, and this lets me discover another waystone that I can warp to and a set-piece village that I can yoinkity-sploinkity. This one in particular is not great since there isn't anything around it to kill, steal, or chop, but expanding my map control is always useful since it lets me explore further faster. My persistence is at least not actively punished by the discovery of a mausoleum set piece. These are super nice early game finds, since they contain a huge number of relatively predictable mob spawners and absolutely nothing else, which makes them about as close to a safe pre-built mob farm as you can get, in theory. Apparently they have been substantially modified from their base form in this version because I'm finding all sorts of mobs in these that shouldn't normally be there. And also TNT traps that go off when the spawners break. So with most of the TNT traps disarmed with a handy-dandy EOD unit that I carry around with me called My Face, I'm free to break the spawners, which I do without a second of hesitation because there is not a chance I'm going to be able to farm the thing with this many holes in place, and then I grab whatever the heck's in the chest. One's locked, and lockpicking is one of those things that firmly exists in the category of guaranteed to get you dead, so I skip it, but the other one has some, sort of maybe useful stuff, I don't know. Loot tables have been reworked in Dregora, so I just kind of grabbed anything shiny and or expensive and bailed. During the exploration train, I finally hit pay dirt with the discovery of not one, but two majorly useful set pieces. The first is an absolutely ginormous dungeon complex that I have essentially zero chance of taking out in any reasonable time frame, which is a good thing, because that means there's a lot of mobs in it. Cracking that sucker may very well be a job for the entire rest of the episode. The second one is one of the best passive set pieces in the entire game. I'm not sure what they're called, but these locations are always extremely well stocked with a selection of weapons, armor, and enchanted books, and even have a secret basement area with a full enchanting setup. They are enormously helpful, even all the way into the endgame, since their loot table often includes mending books, and just finding one is probably going to be a breakthrough I need to progress. The loot value from this one, in particular, is remarkable. The Broken Heart Bauble is going to be a key part of my endgame build, the Cobalt Shield is a crafting component I need for another part of my build, and the Magic Mirror offers unlimited teleports back to your spawn point for free if you can handle the warm-up period and the max level magic requirement. The enchanting table room also comes with a couple more XP tomes, meaning I can now afford to take one on adventures with me to help preserve any levels I find before I encounter death-induced amnesia issues. Of course, I then get ganked by a parasite that heard me having fun through the ceiling, but we can always go back, so that is at best a minor inconvenience. The one thing the set piece lacks, though, is a waystone, so for all the utility there is to be obtained from it, a reliable spawn point is not part of it, and that renders it all but useless for staging assaults on the dungeon, which is fine, actually, because I have a solution to that. There is no reasonable way for me to boat or sneak past to my AO every time I die while carving my way through a dungeon this big, and to be frank, I don't care to try. What I can do instead is just make a new Tower of Power and move my bed. You know, like a normal person. It's not like there's anything special about the spot that it's currently at other than close proximity to a waystone, and the most expensive piece of equipment I have on me at any given time can be replaced by sneezing at the ground 3 times. If access to my loot pile is entirely optional, centralized bases are then useless to me, so why bother with them? The amount of time it's taken me to look past that blind spot is frankly embarrassing, and I could have been doing this ages ago.
Shadow games. Death in the dark.
Oh hey, Lycanites, nice of you to drop by. Anyway, once I grab my stuff, it's back to work attacking the dun. As I was saying, taking out the dun. Wow, I sure love how Lycanites forcibly spawns overpowered gang piles of mobs on top of you that don't go away and you need to render them, and also I think this mod is a giant piece of... So, I guess this is my life now. Okay then. What was I doing? Oh right, dungeon crawling. Yeah, so newsflash, taking out dungeons without armor is kind of not a thing in RLCraft, with a few choosable exceptions, because dungeons have this thing in them called mobs that do, you know, that. So naturally, we are not going to be going through the front door, because that would be dumb, and why would anybody ever waste time trying that? Instead, we're going to be engaging in a forbidden technique called cheese, or in this case, digging, which allows us to go underneath the mildly inconvenient layer of obsidian plating the dungeon uses to try and prevent cheese tactics, and come up in a much more safe, enclosed stairwell area. While this does help a bit in establishing a presence inside the dungeon, with which I can farm things, its effects on parasites are evenly split between extremely effective and utterly useless, depending on whether or not they can dig. They also really like killing all the mobs before I can get to them, which is somewhat inconvenient, because that's basically just the entire plot of the series thus far. So, situation normal. Farming, and progress in general, is still painfully slow, also situation normal, though by the end of what I would consider to be a good first attempt, I am able to leverage my atypical landscaping preferences to grab a foothold in the dungeon proper, and net myself one of what I consider to be the most important early game baubles, namely a Bazor, from a cave spider. If you're feeling cheeky, and I am, you also can just dig up underneath any other spot on the bottom floor of the dungeon. I did this to get access to the other chest, but instead got lucky and was able to take out a bunch of parasites for pre-XP, which was probably more valuable, all things considered. The real trick is then getting all of the loot, and we are on a bit of a timer for that. Parasites aren't going to go around intentionally destroying the terrain for no reason, but the presence of dark platforms and active mob spawners guarantees that there's going to be something for them to want to kill, and if said parasites happen to have a chest full of valuable treasure between them and their next target, well, bye-bye treasure. To get around this, I have devised a clever strategy called being a massive coward, wherein I create a dirt pillar directly underneath the entirely predictable and vertically aligned loot chest locations that I can use to pull up and engulf the chests in. This has the dual purpose of mostly keeping me from being attacked by the entire dungeon, and also keeping all of my giblets together for easy collection when that mostly bit stops applying. Mobs can mine blocks now, apparently. Great! Who knew? The last 4 chests are located at the top of the tower, alongside the final boss of the area, which is the same giant stone golem thing you find on top of battle towers with literally 0 modifications. Well, there's supposed to be a boss, at least. I have this strange feeling that this dungeon is going to be an exception to that rule. It's also, unfortunately, an exception to the chest rule, and the entire place has been so comprehensively trashed that the obsidian substructure is creating accidental nether portals. A procedure that 0 of the 4 chests survived. Which sucks. Not surprising, exactly, but it still sucks, since those were by far the best loot in the entire area. So with nothing else to perform the yoinkity-sploinkity upon, I compress my gear down, pack it up, and head back to my main skybase, as indicated by the random floating tree dungeon thing that burned down a while ago, and also the, kind of PvP server spawn griefing vibe that the whole area has. My haul, while not generous by any metric, is at least something, which is a fair bit more than I had before I started this excavation process. I have some diamond now, at least, which will let me craft another enchanting table because yes, I have lost both of the enchantment tables I found to parasite attacks independently. And I even have a couple of enchanted books that might be worth doing something with once I get gear permanent enough to put them on. The thing I'm most interested in for now, though, is the prismarine crystals, for reasons. But before we can arm that particular Chekhov's gun, I have some work to do, and the first task on my docket is going fishing! Huzzah! Gameplay! All complaining aside, this is actually not that bad, because with fishing all you need to do is park your butt in the middle of a swamp and sit on a lily pad, which is pretty chill. Even better, I'm so far out in the water that for the most part the parasites never get close enough to present an aggro risk for the most part. They can still find me since they get baited into the water by the squids and I can't sneak while reeling in a fish, so they like to aggro every once in a while, but as long as I don't lose the fishing rod, none of this really matters. Unfortunately, it's also very slow, and I didn't get what I need, and I also need way more levels before I can really stand a chance of getting what I need, so it's back to exploration again. Now that I have a non-zero amount of redstone and iron, I can make a compass, which in turn means I can craft an atlas and keep track of all of the incredible amount of nothing that I've found. Interestingly, the atlas also has some new mechanics that reveal the location of wild waystone waypoints, which is a really nice quality of life change, and I love it. And even better, it updates the waypoint to the name of the waystone once you change the waystone's name, so you can actually use your atlas to navigate now. Of course, this comes with the caveat that waystone use also updates your spawn point, which is less than desirable in quite a few situations, so use them with care. This does at least let me demonstrate another fun and clever and forethought-ready thing that I did, which was make a copy of my atlas and store it in my base. These atlases are linked, so if I ever, say, lose one under mysterious circumstances, I can just go back here and make another copy and all the map data is preserved. Very handy. With that done, after some very close calls, I continue to my exploration, and am able to grab a second waystone out to the east, bordering some more rivery areas, opening up new routes for me to navigate. Not that I needed them, mind you. Rivers are not in short supply. For the next while, it's just survey time, and after wandering further up north past my previous attempt at dungeon mauling, I meet great success with the discovery of another wild waystone located directly next to the purple grape lime flavor of Lycanite dungeon. Also, welcome to winter, everyone. It's cold now. I'm sure if I survive more than 5 minutes per life, this might be a problem, but for now, not really. What is a problem is that the parasites have done to my home base waystone, insomuch as it is now sadly lacking in such relevant and important things as a floor. I got very lucky here and was able to sneak back to the surface and rebuild it without losing anything I cared about, but this is probably going to need to be patched up with obsidian as soon as I can spare some. So I'm going to be entirely honest here, I am not entirely certain what I was thinking when I said that I met great success with the Lycanite dungeon. So for starters, take a look around. You know what you don't see? The half a dozen or so boss health bars that should be showing up right about now. That was clue number one, that this was perhaps not going to be a productive use of my time, but hey, sure, why not? Well, I'll tell you why not. Why not? Because I was able to extract 1 chest's worth of loot from this place before the parasite hordes trashed it to the point that I couldn't maneuver safely. It wasn't even like a good chest, it was just literally the first and only chest that I saw in the entire area that was both reachable with turtle strats and not obliterated by rampaging megafauna immediately after. This was an unequivocal failure in every respect. Salvation, in Potentia, finally comes in the form of a battle tower looming in the distance to the far east, and it's about darn time. You don't see it because I cut most of the footage, but I have been spinning my wheels trying to explore and getting ganked for hours now, and I'm starting to get seriously frustrated with these stupid parasite nonsense mechanics. Still, it's a battle tower, we've been wanting one for the entire episode, and if I approach this correctly, it could very well make or break the run, so it's time to put all of the deep-seated anger aside and start strategizing. And not really do a whole lot of that either, because really there's only one strategy worth employing, so let's do that, please. Step 1 of 1, get dirt. And then with that dirt, sneak up and break all the spawners. Yes, all of them. XP is fine and great and all, but I have other ways of getting XP. They suck, but they do work. What I can't get is loot, and I can't steal loot that's despawned because some stupid bug found a pair of horns and decided to cosplay a bull in a China shop to viscerally myrtleize some hapless skeleton or something, and that goes double for me. I'm somewhat successful in this. The real hazard here isn't mobs, or even the parasites, it's the degenerate piece of mod known as Simple Survival, which has generously decided to combine with Serene Seasons to punish my desire to play the game with constant, non-stop hypothermia in the middle of a tropical jungle swamp. Combine this with the game's insistence on constantly raining for no good reason, the fun feature Waystones have of non-consensually resetting your spawn point, and me having to go and get a boat every time I die, which coincidentally is usually just as I equip my Simple Survival can often die armor, and you have a recipe for a very aggravating time. This mod is stupid and unbalanced and just bad in the base game, and I can confidently say that adding parasites has done precisely nothing to warm my opinions of it. Still, sheer brute persistence works wonders, and I do finally prevail, and after a lot of death, I break the last spawner. Even the game engine thinks I need to quit at this point. Those jitters you see aren't the footage or the video, that's the game engine's garbage collector losing its ever-loving mind because of what I assume is a memory leak issue. These have been cropping up incidentally, but dying a bunch of times and having to re-render land unexpectedly does not help matters at all. So with that hellfest done with, I can craft myself yet another set of cold weather gear. Not, mind you, that it does much of anything, and side note, if you're gonna make people wear special armor and sacrifice almost all of their effective defense rating for a gimmick, you could at least have the decency to make the gimmick armor hard counter the thing it's supposed to hard counter anyway. I make more useless cold weather gear and try to survive long enough to collect my spoils, which is not very long, but it is long enough. Once I get all my ducks in a row, and there isn't random parasites teleporting up to the 5th floor of a tower that has no other accessible points for them to enter, looting these things is pretty easy. Through some ridiculous miracle of spawning behavior, the Guardian Golem hasn't been ganked yet, as evidenced by the tower still standing, but it still does present a bit of a hazard in the form of a giant boss that wants to fireball you and will instantly aggro if you walk up to the top of the tower or try to open either of the top 2 chests. This would be exceedingly problematic if I had any intention of doing either, but lockpicking and opening hoppers don't count, so I can just do that and skip the boss fight entirely. While useful, the loot I get from this isn't what I was looking for, and we're basically back to square one in that respect, albeit with a few more piles of useless shiny rocks. The game is really not feeling all that nice today, it would seem, which fits because I'm about 2 steps away from putting my fist through the monitor. This tower took, I kid you not, 6 hours to find and loot, and I didn't get anything I was looking for except for some blaze powder, which I could have gotten basically anywhere else. So in the end, it all comes back to this. One bird, a whole forest, and a whole load of axes. I am serious here, folks. I do not know how I can progress any faster at this point. Dungeon loot is basically looking like it won't happen unless I can steamroll any mob presence I encounter, which means my progression options are limited to open world resource collection. And all the resources that I want to collect require more levels and better gear to safely collect in the first place. So here we sit, chopping trees, and also edging hypothermia with a full snowsuit on. Correction, I am now edging hypothermia with a full snowsuit on in a jungle biome because apparently the other biome was too cold or something. With wood comes levels. With levels, charcoal, and with charcoal comes progress. Glacially slow, excruciatingly miserable progress, but progress nonetheless. Once it stops being in the middle of winter, I'm gonna need to explore a bit and try and find a better source of wood, though. The jungle works in a pinch, but all of the trees in it are kind of spindly compared to a vanilla jungle, and half of the ground is covered in useless bamboo, so it's not actually all that great. Multiple parasite attacks during this leveling process do, however, convince me that it's time to remove my primary base of operations from the general location that it's currently positioned in. The old base was fine design-wise, I just made the less than intelligent call of building it near blocks that parasites could spawn on and fly over to me from, so I opted to put the new one above one of the wild waystones I found in a nearby defiled land for easy access. And Even better, for my first new home renovation, I made this. A monument to the concession that maybe, just maybe, the parasites have won. For now. But not forever. For you see, all these torches that I've been crafting, yeah, I kept them. And this structure is why. You see, the reason I'm struggling to bulk craft so many torches for XP isn't the lack of flint and steel, it's the lack of unlit torches. Placing and breaking them normally takes too long, which forces me to go chop and smelt fresh wood, which gets me killed, forcing me to make more gear, which gets me killed, and the vicious cycle continues. Well now, with the power of auto-clickers, that need is no more. You may not like it, but this is what peak RLCraft Dregora way too many parasites gameplay looks like, and I am nothing if not a peak player in this stupid game mode. It's not a perfect strategy, mind you, because spamming upwards of several thousand block light updates a second tends to make the game exceedingly unhappy, and after about 9 stacks of torches, it starts throwing in the towel and dropping frames to single-digit numbers. Fortunately, this can be fixed by closing and reopening the game, but unfortunately, the act of closing and reopening the game too many times ticks off Java's garbage collector, which forces me to deal with the intermittent, large lag spikes instead of, or in addition to, the light engine lag, and the only way of fixing that is reloading the game entirely. Still, the results speak for themselves. In around 10 minutes, I was able to convert an entire inventory of torches into their unlit forms, and that represents a huge amount of experience. My final total ends up being enough to almost entirely fill 2 XP tomes, which is peanuts by late game standards, but right now, in the position I'm in, is just shy of game breaking. Now we just repeat that, as many times as we can. Even with the process as perfected as I can get it, there are still unavoidable bottlenecks. Gravel is easy to source in bulk, but iron is somewhat less so, and the expedition I mounted to go and get some went very poorly. See, I have a waystone to another unlooted village, but it's so far away that it costs XP to travel to, so I've kind of just been ignoring it. Well, Goose, I thought to myself, why not just go and get iron from there? There's bound to be something worth stealing. This was a great plan, except for the part where waystones non-consensually reset your spawn points, and mine just so happened to get set at the village, just in time for me to get spawn camped by my own corpse half a dozen times. You'll also, in this clip, notice a fun new anvil clanging sound effect. That is a passive ability I unlocked called Undershirt that gives me a saving throw against attacks that do 2 or more hearts of damage to a critical body part and would otherwise result in a fatality. Since basically every attack is going to result in a fatality, this is effectively just an ability that lets me take 1 free hit, and while it will do exactly squat all 90% of the time, it may, and I do emphasize here, may help when I have to fight off a single low-level parasite, like a past Goose iteration or something, I don't know. It was free, and it's like the only defensive passive that I can afford right now, so I took it. The mission wasn't a complete failure, though. I was able to loot the library before I ran back home with my tail between my legs, and I got a few more decent enchanted books out of it. None of them are life-changing, but a lot of them are going to be handy later on, maybe, hopefully. So, success! I have failed successfully. Or successfully failed, or one of the two. Anyway, gravel is easy. Iron is still tricky, but only because of the amount I need. The parasites have been so active in my old home area for so long that the entire map is basically just rocky Swiss cheese, and there's a bunch of ore exposed I can grab for a quick hit. But that isn't where the real money is. Oh, yeah, there goes Lycanites being a pain in the butt again. Check that one off the bingo card 37 times in a row. As I was saying, that prize goes to this thing. This is a set piece that is near and dear to my heart for the single sole and only reason that it has a redstone contraption in the middle of it that uses a whopping 50 blocks of iron in its construction. For reference, 2 blocks of iron is enough flint and steel to get me almost a full book of XP, or around 28 levels starting from a zeroed out bar. The structure also has lava source blocks in it, which normally I would be less interested in, but I don't see caving in my near future and would like to stop freezing to death in my own house, so I grabbed some of that as well. And then, with that secured, let's be real, you already know what comes next. So there you have it. XP problems, at least in the short term, are solved. I went ahead and burned through most of my iron block reserve to get a couple levels in various passives, did some skill upgrades, and maxed out my magic stat in case I ever want to use the magic mirror, but we are pretty much past the point where skill upgrades are going to be visibly relevant, and it's time to start looking for more exotic and material-intensive forms of meta progression. And to do that, I need to expand my map presence even more. It's spring now, or at least not the depths of winter, and the one good thing that came out of my fruitless adventures with the battle tower is that I discovered a couple more wild waystones, so I opt to grab those before pushing ever forward. Almost immediately, my iron shortage proves to be short-lived, as literally right next to the battle tower is another statue thing that has a staff or something with some iron blocks that I can steal. Yay, tasty XP. And if you ever thought I was joking about the impact those levels made, look no further than this example. When I'm sneaking, my aggro range is now so low for certain kinds of parasites, they can literally run over me and not notice. I have no idea what this monster was hunting for here, and I did not care to check because I'm not risking 23 iron blocks to see if it wants chicken strips to go with its fries. But yeah, this is why we level stealth. Oh, speaking of fries, it's me. I am the fries. And this is a dragon wingtip. An underground dragon wingtip. Now, in hindsight, the thing was obviously just sleeping. However, I, remembering what happened to my last stationary-ish dragon I encountered, had an ooga booga monkey brain moment, panicked, and decided that I had to harvest it before it glitched out and disappeared or got eaten or whatever, Kool-Aid manned my way through the glass, and then disturbed an otherwise perfectly happy high-tier dragon. Oops. Embarrassingly, it wasn't even the dragon that got me, and as far as I can tell, the dragon didn't even care. Instead, it was a cinder spawned from fire that was burning for an entirely unrelated reason, but still, I consider the discovery of said dragon well worth the sacrifice of an atlas that I can just dupe again in 5 seconds flat. This is because I'm kind of at an inflection point, strategy-wise. I can, for the first time in the playthrough, afford to start making legitimately decent equipment. I just need an excuse, and a high-tier dragon may just be the excuse that I need. Of course, this and all the other hijinks I'm going to have to get up to make this work will need to wait until the next video, so for now, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed.